Hey guys, Raw Food Writer here. Today I'm going to show you what I like to do when I find myself having too many avocados. So what I like to do with a bunch of avocados is I'll make guacamole dip. Now you can use a food processor for this, but you really don't have to if you don't have one or you just don't want to go through the hassle of cleaning it. There's also a way you can just do it by hand too, so that's what I'm going to show you here. If you watch some of my other videos, I actually cut an avocado before, but in case you did not see that, you just want to make a cut right down the middle, and then you actually turn the avocado so your knife is resting on that seed the whole way, and it just splits it. So then you have two sides. Obviously you want to get rid of the seed. So you can take a spoon, it's really handy. Yeah, when you're cutting avocados, I recommend having two things, a knife and a spoon. Really handy. So just get rid of this. Okay, and then something I like to do, I will score it. I usually do like one line down the middle and then about 2 or 3 cuts. Probably about 3 long ways. And you take your spoon again, and what you want to do, you just want to like scoop it out. And it should, if it's ripe, it should come right out for you. So good thing about this snack is it's actually 100% raw. So if you are someone who has gotten on the raw food kick, this is a great way to stave off some of your cravings. It makes a great snack, and it's definitely one of my favorites. I'll actually, like if I'm gonna watch a movie, or maybe just like sit down with friends and they may be snacking on like chips and pretzels, things like that, I'll actually bring this along so I have something of my own that I can munch on and, you know, just enjoy as I'm sitting around or watching that movie. This is a really nice one here. Yeah, you can always tell a ripe avocado because if you pick it up, typically the outside skin is going to be darker. If it's light green, there's a good chance that it's actually not ripe yet. And you can also feel it, like you just take your fingers, just like lightly squeeze it, and it should give a little bit. That's a good sign. After you go through like a few of them, buying them, and maybe you get some that are like way too ripe, you'll learn pretty fast. But if you ever do open one up and it's like brown, or got like lines going through it, it's no good, and you might as well just throw it away, honestly, because it's not worth eating that. And if they're not ripe enough, they'll be too hard. So it's pretty easy to tell if they're not ripe yet. Now they will ripen up. A lot of times I'll buy them at the store before they've completely ripened, bring them home and just set them on the shelf, and they do usually ripen up within a couple of days or so. If you're not going to be using them for a while, go ahead and just stick them in the fridge and store them there, and that'll slow down their ripening process. And that stands true for most fruits and vegetables as well. It's a pretty good one here too. Yeah, the avocados are always a little tricky. They gotta be just right. These are actually organic avocados from Whole Foods. They were on sale, so I got a pretty good deal. I finally sprung for the Amazon Prime. I guess you get the better deals down there at Whole Foods. So I think it's worth it. If you're someone who shops there a lot and you're into eating the whole fruits and vegetables, I recommend it. Especially if you're a student too. They have an even better discount. Okay. I think that's enough avocados. Now I'm also going to do 1 tomato. Usually do like 1 cut down the middle. Sometimes I will cut this stem out. You don't, I mean if it's not a really big stem and it's not going to bother you, it's not the end of the world, but I usually like to get it out of there, especially if I'm preparing a meal for somebody else, especially. I'll usually do something like that, and then just hold it together. Knife could stand to be sharpened, but it'll be okay. And some people like mincers, things you just put it over and you just chop it down like that. That's all fine too. I am just doing it like this for simplicity, and to me it makes less dishes, so it's always a plus. Alright, that's gonna be good. Actually, I probably should have actually wanted to mash this first. Yeah, before you actually add other ingredients, it's probably best if you just go ahead and you're going to want to mash up your avocados when you're making guacamole dip. So it's no problem. Just get most of these out of there. And for the mashing, you actually want to use a fork. A fork will do a very good job, especially if the avocados were very ripe. You just kind of work your way around and just what you're doing here, you're just essentially having it take on the form of a dip, basically. You don't want large chunks in your guacamole. Maybe smaller chunks, but you want it mostly like a paste. And like I said, just more like that dip type of substance. Now, while you're mashing, now is actually a good time to go ahead and add any spices that you want. Today, I'm going to add freshly cracked black pepper. Usually add a good bit. I started using the whole ground black peppers probably maybe 2 years ago, and I find that I actually enjoy them a lot more versus like if you buy the stuff that's already been ground. It's just, this is a lot more pungent, and I feel like you can just taste it better, and it definitely keeps it fresher too, being in its original form until you go ahead and use it. So that looks good. Now a little bit of salt. As far as measurements, I would say maybe like a teaspoon of black pepper and then 2 teaspoons of salt, something like that. This is actually a garlic salt I really like, so that's what I typically go for. It would also be great to have like fresh garlic cloves. That's something else I'll do a lot. Just chop them up and throw them in there as well. That would be great, but you know, if not, this is a great substitute. Go ahead and mix that up more. Nice. Okay, put the tomatoes in. You could probably chop these up a little farther, the tomatoes, but for me they'll be just fine. A little bit of onion would also be really tasty in here as well. But what I do have, don't have onions, but what I do have is this. It's a habanero pepper. If you've never tried this before, this is very hot. Now this is hotter than jalapenos. Jalapenos go great with this. They're a little bit more mild, so they're not gonna, burn anybody's throat out. But this one, it will. But just be careful with it. Now I'm not gonna put this whole thing in there, and so I'll just use just a little bit, something like that. Also, something else I learned about hot peppers, typically the seeds hold most of the heat. So be careful with that. Yeah, when you're working with even just a habanero, you really, especially if you're cutting it, you don't want to be touching the inside of the pepper and then like touch your eyes, because you will regret it. It's definitely going to burn. But just cutting off a piece like this, it's going to be absolutely fine, especially I feel like a lot of the fats from the avocado sort of absorb the heat, or at least they make it so it doesn't, you're not affected by it as much, in my opinion. But certainly if you use enough, you definitely would be. So, but I like a little bit of heat in my food, especially with something like guac, like a Mexican dish. To me, it's like you need a little bit of heat. That up. Good. Give it another mix. Make sure not one person gets all of the hot peppers at once. That would not be good. Okay. Now, what is a good guac dip without chips, right? So if you're trying to stay raw, you don't want to do tortilla chips, potato chips, anything like that. But what you can do, you can actually use vegetables. Today I'm going to use carrots and cucumbers to make my chips. So I'll show you how I do that. If you're using carrots like this, I'll get rid of that very bottom there. You can eat it, you don't have to throw it away. And then you want to cut it at an angle. So if you were just to cut it like this, you would just have basic, like, really small chips. You're not going to do much with that. But if you turn things on an angle like this, that's actually going to allow you to get a much larger chip. So you can get a much larger dip. And again, if you're using a food processor, I know a lot of those have settings where you can make like the ruffled cuts, and that would actually be really good to mimic like Utz ruffled potato chips. You could definitely do that. But these are going to be just fine. Almost looks like ginger, but it's a carrot. Use this nice purple one. Oh yeah, like I said, this is actually one of my more favorite snacks. especially when I am on the raw. Just a great way to chow down. And I mean, I would eat this even if I wasn't specifically doing a raw food diet. You can also use cucumbers for your chips. So essentially it's the same thing. Cucumbers are usually a little bit bigger, so you can do just regular circle cuts for your chips. But again, I like to do the diagonal cuts. Just makes it a little bit fancier, I guess you could say, and I do think it makes for a better chip. So see what you think. Give it a try. I usually go maybe 1/8 of an inch or so thick. That way it's got enough rigidity to it. Makes for a nice crunch. It's not going to break off in there either. So. Okay. And that's how you do it, guys. 100% raw guacamole dip. So I hope you enjoyed it. See you on the next one.